then you're going to have a hard time even submitting to God. So it's like, if you don't want to be in submission to someone higher than you, or someone that's going to be a leader to you, then it's like, okay, then what are you going to do? You submit to your boss at work. Is that wrong? You know, it's like, I don't know why it's so controversial when it comes to the husband.
So you guys can't see my wife's face because she's shy, but I felt like it would be a good idea for us to look at this topic and share our thoughts on it together. You want to say hi?
Hello.
All right.
Question. So I get what I understand what you're saying. Like, I understand your like point of view now. I'm getting a better aspect on it. But also, like, I would say, like, how do you feel, like, you know, like, you're really lucky to be with, like, Andrew. Like, you guys have been together for 17 years, but, you know, like, when people also have children with someone, and like, maybe even more than one child, and they leave. They leave, like, the man leaves. Then what?
That's what happened to me.
Yeah. So, like, how did you, I think you said that, yeah. So how did you do with that? Like, what did it say, like, you never met Andrew? Like, you know what I mean? Like, what would you, like, how did you get yourself out of a situation like that?
Well, I think I had a few things going for me. I had no family support. So I had no help from my parents, no siblings to help me, nothing. I was, like, completely on my own. So it was hard. It was a struggle. It was heartbreaking for me. People hear my story and assume that I was, like, promiscuous. That was never the case at all. I had a really tough childhood, like a lot of you guys probably had. I did not have great parents. I was in a really messed up situation as a kid and didn't realize that I was making dumb choices either. So I picked a guy who took off, and that sucks, and I was heartbroken. But luckily for me, I did meet a good guy. And I think the only reason that I kind of was saved from the whole single mom situation is because my expectations were realistic. I was willing to be very submissive and cooperative with a good, virtuous guy. When I met Andrew, he didn't have, like, a ton of money or anything like that. We were both young. We were both knuckleheads too, but we were well-meaning knuckleheads, I guess. And he was like, look, I think you're great. By the way, I also tried to break up with him because I thought he was way too good for me. And I was like, look, my life's a mess. Please don't. It's going to be bad for you. And he was like, look, I'm fine with the situation as long as you're not going to give me trouble, as long as you're not going to, like, you know, fight me on everything. If we can do this together, then we can do this together. And that's what we did. And so since then, I've had to trust him, and I've had to not give him a bunch of shit, not fight with him over everything, submit when he says, look, honey, this is what we're going to do. Even if I have reservations, even if I'm not so sure, I go, all right, I trust you because you're the leader and I depend on you, right? It's not easy for women to do that because we're trained that if you do that, you're going to get abused, everything's going to go horrible, you know, so women are scared to do that. But if you find a good guy that at least has his basics, no guy's perfect, and they're all going to learn, just like I had to learn to be a wife, you had to learn to be a husband. But if you have a more submissive attitude and you're like, I support you in whatever you have to do to support us, most good guys are going to rise to the occasion, and they're going to take that challenge head on, and it's going to motivate them to make more money, to try to be good providers. It's only when they feel like they're never appreciated and they constantly have to fight you on everything, usually, that they take off. Now, you might end up like I did with a guy who has, like, a substance problem and he takes off. And that sucks. There's no, like, perfect guarantees in life. But generally, most people's marriages break up because the woman just...
So one of the kind of contentious topics that they have on the show a lot is, like, this whole thing about submission and, like, leadership. And this is not like a Christian podcast at all, but you do see a lot of resistance from, obviously, the women. Like, they don't want to submit. They look at submission as something bad, demeaning in some ways. So you have contact with, like, younger women, like, within the church and maybe outside. Like, is that the same deal? Because, like, this is, like, a very select like, pool of girls, so I'm wondering if there's, like, the same issue, like, in real life, if you will.
I think that based on how the world is right now, even as Christians, you do encounter women that have a point of view more towards, like, being more independent, and I guess do have some sort of issue with the word submission, and not in a way that they're not willing to do it, but that they hesitate, I guess, to
I mean, even within the church, like,
Yeah.
even whenever you hear like the word submission from the pulpit, is like you can see the women like,
yeah, a little cringy. And also, I think, like, I don't know, in our culture, Dominican women, it's changed a lot. Before, like, Dominican women were just like, yeah, you submit to your husband, and now you see like a shift where it's like, I was gonna speak in Spanish, but pretty much saying like, oh, no one like rules over me or something like that, whatever. But
did you ever struggle with that, like, yourself? Like,
no.
Did you, like, no?
Not at all.
Like,
no.
even before meeting me and marrying me, like, just in general, like, were you that concept? Were you ever like, I'm not doing that, or felt weird about it? No,
not really. I mean,
what do you think that is? I
think it's my personality. I am the type of person that needs, like, not that needs it, but I'm not a leader. That's not my personality. I'm a helper. If there's someone there providing guidance, I'm going to be there to help. I consider myself more of a helper than someone that just kind of steps up and says like, oh, I'm going to take ownership of this. So I feel like that personality trait also kind of merged into who I am as a married woman as well. And, also the Bible, we follow what the word says when it comes to submission. And I think when you have an understanding of who Christ is and how the word describes, the Son, the Holy Spirit, and God, you kind of have a better understanding of what marriage is supposed to look like, a Christian marriage is supposed to look like, and you understand it. And it's not that you question it. It's not to say that, like, I'm never going to be like, if my husband says like, oh, you have to do something and I feel like it's a wrong thing, it's not that I'm going to be like, oh yeah, I'll do it because he's the husband. I'll question it and I'll ask, like, I don't think that's appropriate. If it goes against something that's biblical, I'm obviously going to speak up about it. So.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like there's like, I guess it does happen, but I feel like in a lot of cases, it's not like this, oh, I say we're going to do this or we're going to do it. You know what I mean? I feel like more often than not, I'm pretty sure that in marriages, people are talking through what they're going to be doing, or at least, like, that's the whole idea.
I think that's what people think it is. People think it's like, oh, I'm the man, you say what I do, what I say goes. And it's not like that at all. You're a team, you discuss things, you talk it over, and you agree on it as a team, as a couple. So I laugh when people think it's like, oh, you submit to your husband, that means you can't do anything. Like, no, not really. It's not a dictatorship. Yeah.
Well, I think in general, anything or most of the things that we need to make a decision on, we're having a conversation about it. Or I'm like, if it's something with business or something with something else, I'm like, hey, like, this is what I'm thinking, this is what I think we should do, what are your thoughts? Because even if, for example, like, I am the head of our home, right? Even if I were to exert that authority, if you will, like, I personally wouldn't be comfortable feeling like I'm just dragging you into it versus, we've at least had a conversation and you understand where I'm coming from. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and overall, I appreciate that someone else is the lead. That's a lot of responsibility.
It's a lot of pressure if you're taking it seriously.
It's a lot of pressure. Yeah. I don't know why. I mean, that's just me. I'm not eager to be like the lead in certain things, but that's just me.
Isn't going to submit ever. And so men are like, okay, why be the provider? Why be the leader? If you're going to constantly fight me, like, I can't do that.
Yeah. I think I'm going to actually try that, like the whole submissive thing, because I'm actually the opposite of a submissive. So I'm actually going to take that approach from this moving forward, and I'm going to come back and I'm going to tell you how it went. So I'm going to try it.
It's not easy to trust, and, they're going to make mistakes and they're going to get things wrong. They're not going to always be perfect, and you just got to be willing to, roll with the punches with whatever guy you pick. If you pick a husband, you got to be in it to win it with him, and you got to support him no matter what. And if you do that, you're going to make it. Like, that's how people did it in the old days. The one thing I did have going for me was I had an awesome grandma. She's still alive, by the way. She's 98 years old. She's kicking ass. She's awesome. And luckily I had her. And so she had like this more kind of traditional mindset. And she would say, like, Rach, this is where you're kind of going wrong. This is what you should do different. And So it was really helpful to me to have her. But yeah, try it. If you have a good guy and you're like, okay, I can see this man has some virtue, try not being a terrible bitch to him. Try being like cooperative, try being supportive, and not fighting him on things. And you might be really like, it was hard for me, okay? I'm really opinionated too. I have a big mouth. I'm sitting here chatting and blah, 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 blah. But I was just like, all right, I'm going to go all in and give this everything I've got. And I'm sure glad I did, because 17 years later, I mean, I have a rock solid marriage and I love Andrew more every single day. So
one quick thing before I have Eric jump in. That was great, Rachel. I'm sure none of it fell on deaf ears whatsoever. Eric, what do you have to say?
Shout out to Rachel. I really appreciate everything she said. And I told you that earlier, but I'm glad you heard it from a woman, so now you see what it is.
Yeah, no, like I definitely helped to hear it from a woman.
Exactly. See, but even that is a part of what she's talking about. And one thing this generation don't realize is y'all are a part. It's like we lived in a movie. Y'all grew up in the credits. And y'all arguing about people who've seen the movie talking about the credits. That's not the movie. The reality that you live in was crafted and made for you. It's not this organic like you think. You were made to think this way. You were designed to be put in a situation where it's hard for you to find a place because of what happened in the past. So when you have people that's from a different generation, we're not talking to you like we're better than you. We've seen these narratives formulate in our time. So by the time you got here, it seemed like this is just how life is. This is not how life is. So I think you should really take advantage of what she told you, because it's the truth. And a lot of stuff that y'all talk about is from an emotional base. But this generation, I feel like y'all don't respect information and history. Like when she brought up those stats about the CIA, that shit was real.
Do you feel like this propaganda about independency as a woman and these sort of thoughts, do you think it is actually like shaping the minds of women in a different direction like he's saying, or no?
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, if you're seeing it on social media, on TV, movies, like, it's everywhere. So I think how many hours do we spend on social media? How many hours do we spend on YouTube? It's kind of like, I'm gonna go back to the Bible, but you can
do that, that's okay.
But that's why, there's an emphasis on enriching yourself in the word, because I think it's a Psalms that says meditate on the word day and night. When you meditate on things, it becomes a part of who you are. So if all you're doing is, watching things on YouTube or movies that push a certain agenda, then you're going to eventually become or put that as part of who you are, part of your personality. So I do agree that there's influence from the media.
Yeah, I think the last thing that I will say, caveat, right? Like, I don't think you should be willing to submit to anyone or to any man, right? I think that if you are looking for a husband or a boyfriend, you want to make sure that this is a godly man, right? Exactly. Because the way that Jesus led was as a servant leader, right? The Bible tells us, husbands, sacrifice for your wives like Jesus did for the church, and he died for the church. Jesus washed his disciples' feet. This macho mentality that some guys have that's getting pushed, that is not worthy of your submission to begin with. So I will say that in order for you to be able to be in that space where you are obeying what the Bible calls you to be when it comes to submission and things like that, you want to make sure that you are choosing to live life with a godly man and not some of these silly men that are out there.
I mean, that's the key right there. If you as a wife notice qualities in your husband that don't reflect back to the qualities that are mentioned in the word, then you're not, the Bible tells you, don't submit to it. Don't do it, because they're not being Christ-like. So that's the whole key right there. I think that's why it's so difficult for women in the world to understand it, because they're not looking at it from that perspective. But submission to, it comes down to this.
By the way, Jesus submitted to the Father. So submission should not be viewed as a negative thing. Exactly.
It comes down to this. If you can't submit to your husband, then you're going to have a hard time even submitting to God. So it's if you don't want to be in submission to someone higher than you, or someone that's going to be a leader to you, then it's okay, then what are you going to do? You submit to your boss at work. Is that wrong? It's I don't know why it's so
Preach,
controversial to submit to your husband when we submit to authorities. We submit to the laws of the countries that we live in. So I don't understand the controversy when it comes to submitting to the person that you're supposed to love. I don't know. Blows my mind.
Amen to that. Well, ladies and gentlemen, this is what we wanted to share with you. I want to thank my wife, who reluctantly supported this video.
I submitted to this video.
Well, don't worry. We'll edit it. I'll have you look at it and see if
Okay, good.
if you're good with it.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Well, thank you for joining me. And as always, just wanted to remind you that we must persevere. Peace.